Okay, so what have we learned? This is Jake from Drunken Logic, and this is the final episode of Something About Nothing. We've been talking about our new EP, how it was recorded entirely to tape and with guitars, not using a keyboard for the first time in my life. How it came to me as an idea to group these songs together at the very beginning of the pandemic. How my own history with bullying and my interactions with certain masculine tropes in our society affected the writing of these songs. Rounding Up is about a friend of mine who was an emotional abuser to women. 10 Years Time is about this terrible bullying roommate that I had when I first moved to Los Angeles. Static on the Radio is about the media bubbles we can fall into to reaffirm our own perspective on the world without challenging ourselves to make room for other ideas. In the Shadow of the City is about the meaningless quest for one-night stands. Born Mad is about somebody who's running towards toxic masculinity because of the media figures in his life and choosing to think of himself as persecuted and wronged by society at large. So yeah, we've talked about a lot. One thing I don't think I've totally told you about, though, is the struggle I've had with diet and eating over the last several months. Gigging full-time, waking up really late in the day, going to bed really late at night, really screwed with my sleep and food schedule. I was not somebody who had a great sense of hunger cues. I exercised a lot, but when I dieted, would swing back by about 15, 20 pounds, depending on how hard I'd gone and how much protein powder I was pouring into my daily diet. And at the end of 2021, I realized that this weight swing that I was doing and calorie counting every day was a source of stress and anxiety in my life that I couldn't really get out of, and that I might have an eating disorder. I ended up getting referred to a therapy program here in LA that believes in the principle of health at every size, which is a newer idea about the notion that the demonization of larger people and the invisibility we treat other body types with, people who don't look like the Ken and Barbie dolls on TV, they can be healthy too. And to be honest, that was not an idea that had occurred to me until I started seeing these people. And I'm grateful for the introduction of it. I'm definitely less judgmental in my own thinking about other people as a result. However, my therapist told me that I should eat everything that I felt like eating all at once. And as somebody with really screwed up hunger cues, that didn't go great. I put on 30 pounds in the span of 3 to 4 months. And the entire time I was telling my therapist, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm an athlete and I feel out of shape. I feel heavy. I feel not like myself. And this therapist literally told me that I didn't believe enough in what she was doing. I needed to have more faith. Within 4 months, I had high cholesterol and immediately terminated my participation in that program. I've since rectified the cholesterol and feel much more like myself, but I have kept a lot of the weight, and I'm struggling with it because it feels like I was manipulated into doing something that I didn't agree with or believe in. And while I'm grateful for the introduction to the notion of health at every size, I don't believe everyone is healthy at every size, and that it's okay to aspire to be better than you are, to be healthier than you are. Weight should only be one measure by which you determine that, but it's not an irrelevant one either. I'm telling you all this partially because I haven't told many people about my experience, but I'm also telling it because I think it's a microcosm of our discussion on masculinity in general these days. No doubt there are societal notions of what a man should be that are archaic at best and dangerously outdated at worst. The idea of a man who constantly needs to prove his dominance to and over others through violence, sexual and non-sexual, is really harmful. I feel like the whole reason we created civilization was so that there would be room for people who couldn't beat other people up. On the other hand, it also feels like we've gotten to some really refreshing, but also incredibly difficult, and at times problematic, new standards for what men are and what men should be. We have a lot of discussions about what toxic masculinity is, and our definition for what toxic masculinity is is almost synonymous with what the societal worldwide definition of masculinity is. And in a time of socioeconomic injustice, when my generation is buying fewer houses than any of the generations before it, when college puts you in debt for essentially the rest of your life, when housing is impossible for people in major cities, and when the job market is changing so quickly and rapidly that jobs are drying up outside of the cities, there are a lot of young men who are going to feel alienated and like failures, caught between two extremes of what masculinity should be and squeezed by the death of the middle class and the lack of community support and help in this country. I don't agree with the men who are turning around and running back towards these what we newly call toxic masculinity. And let's be real, we've only called it and thought of it as toxic in the last 10 or 15 years of our existence. But I do empathize. I know the feeling that makes them turn and run, because I'm guilty of it too. I refuse to back down from a confrontation on the basketball court because I want to prove I'm more of a man. I've said some really nasty things to people because I felt like I was getting bullied and wanted to turn the tables. On the other hand, much more often, I've refused to be vulnerable and to let myself have a break and appreciate what I've accomplished because I haven't lived up to my own and society's definitions of success. I think positive masculinity is most likely somewhere in between toxic masculinity and the opposite of toxic masculinity. I think it's okay to try and be ambitious, to be great, to be competitive in the process, to be prepared to, potentially, should circumstances require it, prove your ability to dominate. But I also believe we now live in a society where those circumstances are increasingly rare, and rightfully so, we're aspiring to make them more rare. There is that old theory that sports are just simulated warfare that lets our primal instinct to dominate and battle out in healthier, structured ways. I think there's probably some truth in that, because throughout my life, that's where I've been most prone to that type of thinking, where I've often struggled to behave in a productive way and to not lash out and hurt myself in the process or hurt others. So I don't think we should deny that urge. I don't think we should pretend that side of ourselves doesn't exist. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having the capability to be the best you can be under those circumstances. But that's not enough to be a real man. I don't think it ever was. You have to know when to use it, when you're using that as leverage. And by the way, your talent, your ability that gives you that leverage can be a variety of different things in this society we've built for ourselves. And that's a good thing. That's one of the things, the benefits of the internet era that gets lost, is that people can build their own businesses and opportunities in the things they are interested in and passionate about and good at in a way that was never available before. At the same time, this world is much more confusing, and it's easier to pretend like things that you don't agree with aren't out there, to see what you want to see and believe what you want to believe. So I hope all men find a way to prove their worth, prove their ability to be competitive and contribute, do something that they may be admired for. But being a man is also having the wisdom to know when and how those things should be deployed, to challenge yourself to be good at more than one thing so that you are adaptable to the world and to your own circumstances. Because otherwise, there will only be one type of person left if we choose only one set of goals for what a man can be. I think there are some things that men tend to be good at that others tend to be not so good at, and that's okay. But I also don't think that a lack of emotional vulnerability is a thing to aspire to, and that having emotional vulnerability should be only a feminine thing. I definitely have not defined what positive masculinity is or should be to my own liking over the course of these conversations, of these discussions. But I do feel like I'm starting to circle it. And that's largely because the music that I made on this EP gave me a chance to think about it and explore it in a way that I hadn't before. And then you've given me the opportunity to share those thoughts with you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. We're really proud of our new EP, An Awful Lot of Nothing, and there's a lot more music coming. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.